Back in Capitol Arena on night 2 of another back-to-back for the Washington Wizards. Tonight it was against the Denver Nuggets without Bradley Beal, without Kyle Kuzma. Kristaps Porzingis, the lone lead ranger of the big three for DC. Finished tonight with 25 points. Denny Avdia with 16, albeit in a loss for Washington. The final score 118-104. Welcome back into the perch here at Capital One Arena. It's Wes Hall along with my brother Jason Smith. Chris, Drew, and Megan will be joining us momentarily. A lot of this post-game show will be focused on Kristaps Porzingis' performance tonight, hearing him mic'd up and a lot of other pertinent conversations. But right now, Jason, I want your immediate reaction to what we saw tonight.
You know, I thought it was a good first half of the Washington Wizards. They fought. They stayed within striking distance. But that third quarter, the Nuggets came out with some force. They said something in the halftime speech that said, don't play around with your food. Go out there and get the job done. And I think really it all came down to the three-point shooting.
Yes.
15 for the Nuggets, 4 for the Wizards. That was basically the key tonight because that ball movement was key. They were going inside out. They were making the defense work, and they were getting open looks from deep. That's really what was the difference maker.
You know, it's interesting, too, because we talked about being up at 2 at the half, and we're like, all right, at the time, if I'm not mistaken, Porzingis had 15, Denny had 14, and I'm like, okay, this is trading in the right direction. Mind you, we're missing 2 of our best players not on the court tonight. And then that third quarter. Now, mind you, Washington won 2 out of the 4 quarters tonight. But it was that third when we saw that separation, Jason.
Yeah, they just went out there. They said, you know what, we're going to stop messing around. This is the #1 team in the West. They're coming off of a 5-game road trip. This is their last game before they head home. So they said, you know, in the first half, we're going to play some odd lineups. It looked like they were kind of disinterested out there. Halftime came around, third quarter, they just shot out of the gates like a rocket.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just a difference between, you know, one of those, like you said, the best team statistically and by record in the NBA, and especially in the Western Conference. I want to bring Chris and Drew in and get their thoughts on it tonight, knowing that we'll be back here in the same arena on Friday. Guys, your thoughts about, most importantly, the second half of this game, Drew. That's when we saw a big difference.
Well, at halftime, I talked about can that momentum from that second quarter carry over in that third quarter. It didn't happen. I mean, almost 40 points scored in that third quarter. 39-16 is not enough. And then eventually, you could hide not shooting threes in that first half and not making threes in that first half, but eventually, night in, night out, this league has come to being a three-point make-and-take league. And how many three-point makes? 4? Not enough.
26, yeah. Chris?
Not enough.
39-16 was the difference that third quarter. I think you and Sticks were really talking about that. Washington committed only 7 turnovers tonight. 6 of them were in the third quarter. That was the separator. That was the difference in this contest. And, you know, we're now starting to see, and I'm wondering at what point in the final 9 games will we see more of this. I'm starting to see some more developmental players now playing. And I'm asking the question, I'm wondering when will that become the norm as we close out this season? Because right now, the Wizards are struggling. It's obvious. And at some point, the Wizards are going to be like, well, we need to figure out what we have in the future. Because right now, no Beal, no Kuzma, you know, Porzingis, you know, did all he could tonight. But that's a loaded roster over there with Denver. They have championship aspirations for sure.
Chris, you mentioned something, though, as we were coming out of the rollout of the game about the fact that Chicago was struggling, and you said that there'd be no loss in the margin between those 2 games. So statistically, make sure that I'm on the right page with you about the implications of this game and, most importantly, Friday's game against San Antonio.
Yeah, so, you know, you don't lose any ground tonight, but you're not gaining any ground.
There you go.
That to me is really the most important thing when you got 9 games remaining on your schedule.
It's a loss. It counts as it counts as a loss. If you're looking at other teams, that's a loss. Win or lose, that's a loss.
Jason, same thoughts to you.
No, our biggest thing is Chicago has the tiebreaker, so you can't just make up the ground on Chicago and hope to tie them. You have to go out there and beat them. If you're within 4 games of Chicago, you got to get up and pass them. You cannot tie with them. And that's the biggest problem, is that there's not enough games left for the Wizards to catch up to Chicago.
Guys,
Wes, real quick, I just want to say this real quick. This is something that's just a Chris Miller observation. This is just my observation, what I've noticed since the All-Star break. Teams that the Wizards are playing are ramping up. And Drew and Jason, you know what I mean by that. In the second half of the seasons, teams that have championship playoff aspirations, they start to ramp up. They start to play at another level. And I'm starting to see when the Wizards are going up against these teams, i.e. Sacramento, i.e. tonight, There's another level these teams can go to as they're getting set for the postseason.
I know, guys, we had talked about this earlier, that one of the key components to the Wizards' success, whether it be regular season or postseason, Drew, is about health, right? So here we are tonight, again, without 2 of the 3 biggest players on our team. Nobody's taking any mercy. Kispert said that last night. Wes Unseld Jr. said it as well. Drew, how much is health a factor down this back stretch for Washington?
It's huge. I knew that before coming into this season and the one before that. That was one of my biggest priorities for this Washington Wizards ball club in the preseason. Number 1, health and availability, especially with the big 3, primarily with those 3 guys, your 3 leading scorers, and they've just been plugged in and out of this rotation and never been whole. And therefore, I think you've lost a ton of chemistry. This team still doesn't have an identity, and we're talking about making a playoff push. But the identity is, which is good, they have a chance every given night to win no matter who's available. That's one thing I have noticed throughout this entire season. It doesn't matter who's injured. If you have Brad, no Kuz, no Porzingis, they give themselves a chance like they did tonight.
So what grade are we going to go with Porzingis tonight? Chris, I'm starting with you. 25 points over the night again in the absence of 2 of his, more formidable teammates.
I'll give him an A for being mic'd up. That was great. I thought we got some really good content. You know, it's hard when you're not whole. And listen, he had to shoulder the load offensively tonight. I give him a B. I mean, look, he does what KP does, right? He got off to a good start. Got his float game going. And listen, he knew he was going to be priority 1 on that scouting report by a Denver Nuggets team that's whole. So I'd give him a B, but definitely an A for the mic'd up stuff. We appreciate him giving us the access.
Drew, what say you?
You know what? I'm going to give him a B+. And the reason why is we knew he could score. He forced the double team, but one thing he did not do is make them pay by making the simple pass out to get more 3-point looks. Only 2 assists, had a ton of opportunities to kick out, but it did not happen.
Room for improvement.
You know, I'd say an A. I liked the mic'd up fashion. I liked what he did out there on the offensive end on the first quarter, second quarter. He went out there after halftime and he was still giving you more and more and more. I do understand the 3-point battle that the Wizards had, but you're coming off of a back-to-back. Your legs aren't going to be there. You can't necessarily shoot the ball that well. Plus, Denver was waiting for us when they were in Orlando. So it's tough to go out there against a team that is so good in the Western Conference and then come back home off a back-to-back. Yes, you're comfortable in your home arena,
right.
But it's difficult to shoot on those back-to-back nights.
Hey, travel is real. I mean, no matter where you go, you still got to clock the real-time minutes and miles in the air.
This Denver Nuggets team want the number 1 seed. I talked to a couple of Nuggets players over there. It's not like they're like, oh, we'll kind of just coast in. We'll be whatever seed we want. Imagine the Denver Nuggets. We've all been to Denver. And you got the home court advantage. You are the number 1 seed in the West, and you got to go there. Of course Denver wants to have the number 1 seed. Hence the reason why they played the way they played tonight.
Indeed. Home court advantage is something that you have to take advantage for. Chris and Drew, I appreciate you as always, my friends. I want to bring in Megan McPeak and get her thoughts on it. Megan, same question goes to you tonight, but I'm going to shift it off to Porzingis, looking at Denny Avdia's performance. He had 14 in the first half, finished with 16 tonight. What say you about his performance?
I thought he played this entire game with confidence, and a confidence that we haven't seen in a couple games. You go back to that 3-4 game stretch where he just seemed like he was getting it done defensively, but his offense wasn't there, and it was, that frustration of getting fouls called against you, but then you attack the paint and you don't get that same respect. And I thought that was frustrating him a lot the last handful of games. And for whatever reason, that optional shoot around before the Orlando game, he got some confidence back. He got a little bit of swag back. And then he went out in that Orlando game and played really strong, played really well. And he brought that home to DC. And I thought he just had a different type of level of swag to him tonight. He had a different level of confidence to him tonight. It wasn't just let me settle for the 3 ball. He attacked the paint. He did it on different levels when it came to his scoring. He allowed himself to just flow through the game and allowed the game to come to him rather than trying to force it and then get frustrated that the ball isn't falling or the shots aren't falling. I thought he played so well tonight on both ends of the floor, and it was just the confidence that he played with and the fluidity and comfortability that he played with tonight for me.
Jason, we saw a turbo sighting on a couple of plays back-to-back. We're like, hey, there goes the kid we were talking about. Again, looking at the numbers tonight, he and Porzingis combined for 41 points, 11 boards, and 8 assists. But Denny in the second half, remember, he's had 14 in in the first half. What was the preventing element that did not allow him to continue that scoring pursuit in the second half, Jason?
Well, I thought the Nuggets made an adjustment in the pick and roll action. They were going out there, they were kind of making sure that they were pressuring him. Now it's a difficult task.
Yeah.
He was the main guy, especially with no Beal, no Kuzma. He was going out there with the pick and roll with the ball in his hand, trying to make the decisions. I thought in the first half, he was getting out in transition, having easy transition buckets. But that third quarter, that pick and roll action, Denver changed it up and made no easy passes for him. He turned the ball over. He kind of put his head down. That's the change from maturity. His growth in the future, got to get past those moments. You're going to make mistakes. Continue to go on to the next play, because in that first half, he had great offensive production. He had great defensive production. It's just tough to go against a Denver Nuggets team that is so good that can make that slight little adjustment and throw you off in that second half.
Indeed. Megan, another thing I'm looking at when I see not only the scrappy nature of Denny, but I saw DeLon Wright getting it in between, jumping in pass lanes, getting it done on offense. Matter of fact, he had one up and under a layup and then turned around and got a block on the very next play. There's a scrappy nature about this Wizards team that they have to think that they can hang their head on that as a positive, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you don't have Kuz and you don't have Brad, that's, anywhere between 40 to 60 points on any given night, right, automatically taken out of your lineup before the game even starts. So you have to find that from somewhere else, but you also have to get it done defensively, because that's two defensive guys that is also missing from the lineup. And when you insert a DeLon Wright and a Jordan Goodwin, you know what you're going to get from them. You know you're going to get that scrappy mentality. You know that they're going to try and get their hands on a lot of deflections, try to disrupt the passing lane, and just try to disrupt what other teams are doing offensively. And I thought they did a very good job of that in the first half and the second half. Although the second half, it wasn't as potent because, let's be real, Denver turned it up a notch. They're the type of team, and they have proven this season, especially when you think of the fact they're trying to get that overall #1 seed to get home court advantage throughout the playoffs. They can flip a switch at any moment. So they allowed the Wizards to be within, striking distance in that first half. Obviously down at the halftime were the Nuggets. But they realized, okay, this is a team that's trying to fight to get in the play-in. We're a team trying to fight for the #1 overall seed. They have the ability and they have the talent on that roster from top to bottom to flip that switch. Wes has said himself, we are not a team that can just flip the switch in the fourth quarter and turn it on. We have to have that mentality from the tip-off. And I thought they had that mentality from the tip-off in the first half. And then that third quarter, they had that lull. But defensively, Goodwin and Wright were going to get after it no matter what the score was, no matter what the deficit or the lead was. You always are going to get that effort from them.
No, indeed, and we appreciate it. It just reminds me as I'm looking at the final score, 118 to 104. That's a 14-point difference when I'm looking at Kyle Kuzma averaging 20, Brad averages 25. There were 45 points not on the court tonight. Yep. Perhaps if we'd have seen it, and because due to health, that might have made a huge difference. Both of you guys don't move. Coming back on the other side of Wizards Postgame Live, we've got head coach Wes Hall Jr. at the postgame podium. We're here in Capital One Arena, so we'll bring that to you live when we return on Wizards Postgame Live on NBC Sports Washington.